Chapter 1. Dungeon Trial.
Art?
James screamed as he bashed a goblin's head with an axe. He let his rage do the talking. He was now in a dog-eat-dog world. Survival was his #1 goal. There was nothing more dangerous than a man who had nothing to lose. After the terrible day he'd had today before the transfer, he realized that mutualistic relationships were only a pipe dream, and thus James went axe-crazy on these deplorable humanoids to vent his frustration. It wasn't hard on his conscience to eradicate these vermin. They were wearing mementos of human flesh in garish necklaces, eyes, ears, someone's pendant hung askew. It was the first time James had fought with his life on the line, and surprisingly, he enjoyed it. These 4 goblins were only equipped with knives, but for an ordinary office worker, they were tough. They showed no fear even when he smashed one of their heads with an axe. A goblin hurled its knife and lacerated his hand. He ignored the stinging pain on his wrist. Adrenaline fueled him as he bashed its head with an overhead swing. Then he bashed it again and again, even when it was clear it was in a death spasm.
Die! Die! Die!
He laughed. He barely recognized his own voice, the slightly manic tinge, the excitement this brawl brought him. He then charged another goblin with his axe. These green demons were only waist tall, and they only had a knife. The knife was the important part. Even if they only had the physique of a kid, if those knives were to stab him, he would still die like any other living being. Such was the unfairness of a weapon. His only advantage was his weapon, his axe. Even when it was merely a foot long, it still had a greater reach than the crude knives the monsters were using. Exhaustion began to creep up on James. He was merely an admin staff member in a startup company, and gym day was a thing he'd told himself, "I'll go tomorrow." Far too many months in a row. There were only 2 goblins left. He could finish this. He took a deep breath and gave a furious roar. This act of killing had filled him with excitement. It felt like he had found a new purpose in life. Killing monsters, bashing their heads to the floor, seeing them suffer and die was the revenge he had been longing for. Another goblin tried to charge him with its puny knife, and he countered with his axe at its ugly body. It did little to dodge. Once it dropped to the floor, grasping at the wound, he charged. He brought the axe up with one resounding scream and brought it down with such force that the skull split in half like a watermelon. He then did it again and again. Blood and viscera are now the office attire for my new career, he thought as he panted, surveying the carnage, his own bloody and extraordinary violence. He laughed and relished the euphoria at the final goblin. What was left of it? The axe that had appeared in his hand when he transferred felt better and better in his grip. It felt like this axe had already become a lifelong partner of his.
James 4. Goblins. 0!
He lay sprawled on the ground, his white shirt stained with blood, goo, and dirt. But he didn't care. He was now jobless anyway, and he didn't want to find work. All he wanted was vengeance. But to whom? And why? A message flashed before his eyes, some kind of prompt. It was the same prompt as before, the moment before he was transferred here. Congratulations, you have won against your first usurpers. The system deems you worthy and will grant you status and unique skills. Installing, he looked at the blue box before him, in a daze. It broke the tempo of his feeling of not having anything in his life. 5 minutes prior, he had been sitting outside his workplace after getting fired. Then, after a sudden prompt and queries, a flash, and he was teleported here with 5 goblins to kill. Why did he even bother fighting these monsters anyway? He could have just let go, let them hack him to pieces. But a drive inside him told him he still had something in his life to pursue. A goal. Query. Do you wish for ultimate power?
Are you asking me?
Yes. We are querying you, survivor.
As opposed to what, exactly?
As opposed to, say, becoming monster food, or being worked to death as a slave. He straightened up, wiping the blood off his face. This office shirt was going to have to be retired after today.
Not really. I just wanted to survive. Boring jobs are fine. But now I feel I need something more. Something to prove.
He sighed while reminiscing about his days. Nowadays, being average and mediocre was no longer accepted. Acknowledged. Query, do you wish for comrades? Are you a team player? The answer came instantly to him.
No, I hate working in a team.
He had enough of his so-called coworker, asking for favors, and his so-called team working him to the bone while they were having a party with rich clients. He wondered why he answered them honestly. This system sounded like an automated machine, but it felt more human than his boss or coworkers. Acknowledged. Query: do you wish to change?
Yes.
He answered quickly and instinctively. It felt like he had an epiphany. The monotonous life was comforting. However, he understood now that people needed to change. They must change. They must adapt and be superior. Those who couldn't adapt fell woefully behind. That wasn't a mistake he was making again. He wanted to change. He wanted to be more adaptable. He wanted to be something more, something suitable for the world. Acknowledged. Calculating. Desire to change accepted. You have been granted a unique skill, Chimera. Chimera, a unique ability to swap your body with other beings to improve yourself. You can swap out any part of your body except the brain. You can also add up to 2 parts of the body that don't exist within your current body. Then the notification about the status screen appeared before him. Name: James. Age: 35. Sex: male. Level 1. Coins: 100. Stats: Strength: 25. Dexterity: 30. Magic: 0. Mana: 0. Beginner Axe. Mastery Level 1. New. Unique Skill: Chimera.
This is all just like a game.
He muttered. He sat down and inspected the skills. It seemed simple enough, for now. When he looked at the goblin's corpse beside him, another message spawned. Do you wish to modify your body? Yes or no. Available body parts: Goblin Hand, Strength minus 30%. Goblin Stomach, Iron Guts. Goblin Legs, Dexterity minus 30%. Goblin Stomach, a monster-derived stomach that allows you to eat and digest any raw food without cooking. A goblin's stomach is the only part superior to a human's. He hovered his hand over the screen. He was conflicted. If the system was to be believed, he would discard his human stomach and replace it with a goblin's. It felt like he was discarding his humanity. How did that even work? He shook his head. It was a useless question. He was teleported here by magic, after all. Most everyone he knew would have been murdered by those goblins if they had accepted the invitation. However, James saw an opportunity, a chance for him to change. He needed to become stronger so he could survive. He must become stronger. If not, he would not survive. His experience had proven that. After a deep breath, he tapped yes. At that moment, a light enveloped him, and he could feel his body changing. Pinpricks of energy surrounded his body. The goblin's corpse disappeared in a swirl of disintegrating black motes. However, he couldn't feel anything different after the spectacle vanished. Of course, the stomach was inside his body, after all. Fighting those goblins felt right. Like he was doing a great service, if only for himself. It felt like all of his frustration all this time was a lie. He thought he was a passive and introverted person when, in fact, he was a predator. New quest. Objective: survive and clear the dungeon. He scoffed at the message. Survive. That was his motto until yesterday. Now he simply wanted to kill. He wanted to vent. He wanted to prove that he was not some pushover, but he was still woefully exhausted. He sat down in the corner, regaining his energy before marching on to the abyss. The dungeon was filled with winding pathways with luminous blue moss that lighted the way. He wondered if this was all a dream or a mental break from being let go. Maybe he'd fallen asleep on the bench outside his office. He glanced down. The blood and pain in his hands was his answer. It was not an illusion. It was too real. Moments later, he found another group of goblins. They were making a camp out in the middle of a large clearing of the dungeon. Moss-draped mushrooms formed an eerie clearing in her. A corpse was being stripped and mutilated by the monsters. A human, he realized grimly, their clothes torn off their body, to be hacked apart. They roasted one of the legs on fire while some of them ate the meat raw. An unsettling realization dawned on him. The corpse could have been him. If he died to the prior group of goblins, his fate would be the same. He would be mutilated and eaten. This was a dog-eat-dog world. If he wanted to survive, he must kill. He counted 5 goblins partying there. However, This group was more adequately armed. One was holding a sword, one a bow, one a shield, and another a spear. One held a staff taller than their body height. That staff didn't look like it was made for bashing. If he read his status screen correctly, there should be magic in this world, though his magic was 0. So that goblin might have been a mage, a dangerous unknown. But these goblins were easily defeated, only if he showed no fear. So he went with what worked before. He charged like a bull. He was a beginner and had no range weapon, so there was only so much he could do. The murder, the possibility of death, excited him. With a roar, he charged. His first target was the goblin with a spear nearby. The green monsters were surprised. They scampered toward their weapons with haste, but he had closed the distance already. They were already in a striking range.
Yeah!
He roared. With a single brutal swing, one goblin's head was split, like hitting an egg against a mixing bowl. The sword goblin tried to intercept, but James ran the other way and lunged at the bow goblin. In close combat, these ranged attackers were helpless. It was the rule of thumb in games to aim for the healer and ranged unit first, and it went down with a gurgle. 2 down, 3 more to go. Only the shield, sword, and mage goblin were left. The sword goblin closed in on him and swung its sword. He parried the blow, however. Its swing had more force than he imagined from such a small monster. It knocked him to the ground. In the corner of his vision, he saw something flash red. Sensing danger, he rolled away with as much agility he could muster and avoided the haphazard fireball flung by the goblin mage. The goblin was stupid. Instead of chasing him, the sword and shield goblin stood there as he sprang up. He smirked at their foolishness. He might have been just a mediocre employee before, but he was still smarter than a goblin, and he worked better under pressure.
Die!
He lunged at the sword goblin. The goblin blocked the strike, its weapon bouncing from the impact of the axe. He took the opportunity while it was off balance and tackled it to the ground. Then, as he mounted it, he raised his axe over and bashed its sorry head straight on. 1 coat of blood and viscera isn't enough for my new dress code. We're adding another layer today, he thought with a bit of dark humor. He smirked at the stupid faces the goblins were making. Even though they were monsters, they could still feel fear. The goblin mage, looking like it had been winded from its attempt to fry him, was trying to conjure another fireball. That was his next threat to deal with. He pushed up from the dying goblin and charged at it. However, the shield goblin lunged with its shield, trying to protect its teammate. He blocked it with his hands. This goblin hadn't drawn its knife, and he was stronger. Another fireball flashed from the corner of his vision. He chuckled. He grappled and maneuvered the panicking shield goblin, gripping it with inhuman strength when he saw his opportunity to make use of a case of unfriendly fire. The fireball hit its back with an explosion, not a powerful one, but he smelled his hair singing. A medium-rare steak of goblin's back was on the menu today.
Jeek!
The goblin screamed as the flame burned its back. It foolishly dropped its shield and the knife it was holding and ran away like a frightened chicken while on fire.
Die! Stupid monster!
Seeing such an opportune chance, James went on the offensive. He grabbed its body, and another skull was split open. When the mage goblin realized all of its vanguard had lost, it tried to flee. James didn't let it go. He threw the axe he was holding at the green creature. It might have been stupid to throw his only weapon, but he was a beginner, and it paid off. The axe embedded itself in the mage's head. Exhaustion crept in. It was less than before. However, the heat from the campfire was soothing. The flickering of the flames was captivating. That's when James realized there was a notification in the right corner of his vision. He had leveled up. Back at his work, he would only get messages and emails if he did something wrong, but it was nice that the system did the reverse. He felt like he had gone down the right path. You have leveled up to level 3. Coins received, 10. Do you wish to modify your body? Yes or no. Available body parts. Goblin hand. Strength, minus 30%. Hand slot. Lesser mana core. Fire spell. Magic plus 10. Mana plus 50. Extra slot. Goblin legs. Dexterity minus 30%. Leg slot. He inadvertently giggled. This unique skill was amazing. Even when his magic stat was 0, he could still use magic if he plundered the body part of a mage. With this new skill, he could become anything he wanted. Whether using magic or flying in the sky, he could do it. He just needed to find the right body parts. He picked the mana core without hesitation. Acknowledged. Here are your final stats. Name, James. Age, 35. Sex, male. Level, 3. Coins, 110. Stats, strength, 35, up 10. Dexterity, 32, up 2. Magic, 0. Mana, 0. Skills, beginner axe. Mastery level 1. New, unique skill, Chimera, goblin stomach, iron guts, stomach slot. Lesser mana core. Fire spell, magic plus 10, mana plus 50, extra slot 1. James tilted his head. Even when he had equipped the mana core, the stats didn't show any change. Nevertheless, he could still feel the power inside him. It was alien, like he was growing a third hand or something. When he focused on it, a small fire, like that of a candle, flickered above before his eye. He didn't understand how these stats worked, but since he got the magic he was promised, he didn't dwell much on it. He didn't realize it yet, but the stat augmentation from his unique skill was separate from his normal stats. His stats from the status screen only showed his base stats from leveling and not from weapons or skills. Exhaustion began to overwhelm him. There was no clock, no sun, and no electricity. The phone in his trousers indicated that he had been here for 6 hours. It was almost midnight. The phone would soon run out of battery. He sighed once again. He was about to miss his online game daily reward. He chuckled. Why would he bother playing on a computer screen now? He now lived in a game world where there were levels and monsters to kill. He was trapped in this dungeon with no way out. However, instead of fear and worry, he felt relieved. Here, he was alone. No coworkers would nag him.
Well, I am fired either way.
He muttered as exhaustion finally caught up to him, and he fell asleep. Christmas was just around the corner. He must be the most miserable person in the world. He lost his job, had no girlfriend, and would be kicked out of his apartment in the new year. Alas, one thing was for sure. Killing these monsters brought him excitement, and he would continue to do so now until his body no longer lasted. Little did he know that chaos was about to engulf the world, and he was about to emerge on top. However, by the time it happened, he no longer cared for such things, for his wrath was eternal. Chapter 2. James.
James, your performance has been below expectations this month, and thus, we have chosen to end our partnership with you. We will not prolong our contract. This has been a difficult decision for us. However, we need to prioritize our company's future. Starting tomorrow, you no longer need to come to work.
His boss, whose name James didn't bother to remember, said to him. While his words were polite, the fact that his eyes went to the papers in his hands spoke a lot about his sincerity. That's how James got fired from his job. The world does not need average employees. With automation, everyone was expected to surpass others in a battle for survival. There is no such thing as work-life balance. Everyone must be committed.
I am fired?
James asked for confirmation. James kind of expected that this would happen eventually. Working in a startup company was a very demanding job, and he had no ambition to step on others. Nevertheless, the news was still shocking to him. That's how the modern day worked. Employees were no longer valued. When an employee was deemed inefficient, they were fired without hesitation. The ruthless company cared not for their employees' future. He was not the only one. To stimulate growth every year, the company would let go of 1 or 2 of their worst workers, and James was the one they picked this year.
Yes.
His boss nodded. He didn't remember how he got out of that conversation. All that he could remember was that he sat on a bench, staring at the sky in a nearby park. Now that he was fired, he had to go job hunting again. It was a nightmare for him. The uncertainty and the ghosting that job companies do nowadays were beyond cruel. Often they would not reply to him at all. Often an AI would reject his applications.
What did I do wrong?
He muttered to the sky. He thought he would be more anguished, more angry. He thought he would lash out at them violently, but he didn't. In the end, he just went to a nearby park, staring at the sky like a loser, pondering whether what he had done was worth it. His work for the past 5 years was in vain. James realized that he was merely a cog in a machine, something that could be replaced at any moment. He had no worth in the company's eyes. Rage burned in his heart. However, He was merely a powerless, mediocre office employee. He had no power. All he could do was endure until the day he died. His rage simmered silently in his heart. Earth's maturity condition fulfilled. System installation in 200 hours. Earth's trial has begun. Advance warning. Do you wish to enter the system's introduction trial?
Hey, what's happening?
James wondered whether he had gone crazy, for he saw a blue screen pop up before his very eyes. Response to the query. The world has been considered mature and thus will now undergo a trial. Dungeons will spawn and beasts of mana will appear. However, Earth's life forms are not used to mana and systems. The system has provided you with a chance to experience the trial firsthand. To all sentient life forms, do you want to enter a trial dungeon?
What is a trial dungeon?
When James looked around him, people had the same confused expression as him. James then asked the being before him further questions. Entering a trial dungeon means being transported into dungeons before the trial of the world on Earth commences. There, hosts are expected to survive and clear the dungeon. Only then will the host be deemed worthy to survive. Do you wish to enter?
Really? Good. I wanted to get away from here as fast as possible.
He answered. He didn't know why he said that. He just wanted to go far away, away from Earth. He felt like he didn't belong here. Yes. Before that, we need to inform you that the system trial may pose a risk to the user's life. Do you still wish to proceed?
Yes, I have nothing here. If I die there, that's better. I am already over 30. There won't be any jobs for me here.
James answered firmly. Query complete. Transfer in progress. You will be transferred to Trial Dungeon 12-4. May you survive the trial, Survivor. Work hard and progress. At that moment, light enveloped him, and he was transported to a cave-like dungeon. He was transported to a room with a short axe and 5 goblins. When they locked eyes, the goblins squeaked and rushed at him. Feeling danger for the first time, James yelled and grabbed the weapon that was given to him, a short axe that was often used by firemen. He didn't know why the system gave him that weapon, but he would use it. That was James's life before he fought with these goblins. A few hours later, he woke up startled. He was lucky that there was no goblin to ambush him. He soon stood up and continued exploring the cave. The cave was monotonous. The sparkles and light of the moss on the wall were enchanting and beautiful at first sight, but they soon grew dull. On the winding pathway he found a goblin. This time it was alone and merely had a knife with it. He put down the spear and prepared an axe. He wanted to ambush it.
Easy prey.
Nevertheless, ambushing another was not as easy as it sounded. This was not a video game. His footsteps were as loud as an elephant in this rocky cave. The goblin noticed him and squeaked. It then charged at him. James had good adaptability. The same opponent wouldn't work on him twice. He dispatched it with a swing of his axe. Its head drew a beautiful arc and bounced off the cave wall, awarding him with a coin. He didn't know what the coin in his status screen was for. However, seeing the number go up filled him with a sense of achievement. A howl was soon heard, and an emaciated wolf came with another goblin. That goblin earlier was not merely squeaking. It was calling its friend. James observed the wolf. The wolf looked weak as it floundered when it ran. Its eyes were out of focus, and saliva poured out from its teeth. Even though it looked weak, he was worried. The fangs were sharp.
It didn't have rabies, did it?
He muttered. This was another world, and it had its own rules. There wouldn't be such things as diseases unless they were approved by the system. However, James was still worried. No matter how you looked at that dog, it was clear that it was rabid. James pulled back to take out the spear that he swiped from the goblin corpse he had killed before. His axe was securely hung on his belt together with a sword that was also swiped from the goblins. He then took a stance, waiting for the rabid wolf to make the first move. He was an amateur. His only references for using weapons were from games and movies. The wolf howled again. The goblins squeaked like rats as they tried to surround him. Unlike before, when he took them by surprise, this time both of them were ready. They displayed some sort of coordination. Nevertheless, it was futile, for they were in a cave. No matter how they spaced themselves apart, they couldn't surround him. Using a spear was much easier than using an axe, due to its longer reach. When the rabid wolf lunged, James countered it. The spear penetrated the dog, killing it. However, the spear also snapped. At that moment, the goblin beside it dashed with its knife. James jumped, trying to dodge the nasty green monster that attacked him. There was not enough time to pick the axe on his belt. When the goblin gave chase, James hit the monster with the best falcon punch he could muster. The goblin also managed to get a slash in with its filthy knife. Once he got enough distance, he pulled out the axe and smashed the fucker's head off. He sat down and took a deep breath. Adrenaline really took a toll on his stamina. His heart was beating like crazy. Even with this short fight, he was already short of breath and needed to rest. Thankfully, this was a beginner dungeon aimed at survivors to get accustomed to monsters and systems. He was fortunate just now, as he only received a light scratch. If that goblin had gone for a stab instead of a swing, the result would have been different. After another hour of rest, he continued into the dark and dimly lit cave. The cave showed change. The walls were now made of bricks instead of natural stone, and the path he could take branched into two. When he went to the left, there was a treasure chest, a short distance away. James was elated. This world mimicked a game with an obvious treasure chest laid in the open. He was about to open it but hesitated when he heard sounds coming from the chest. He suddenly remembered that in games, some treasure chests were bugged. This was real, not a game. It wouldn't be a laughing matter if there were some kind of deadly trap inside. However, the allure of treasure chests couldn't be underestimated. There might be something he desperately needed inside, like a health potion or magic scrolls, and thus he tried to open it from a bit further away using a sword. If there was an arrow, it shouldn't hit him. If it was poison gas, he could just run. Little did he know that another surprise was waiting for him. He immediately jumped back as a snake came out from the chest and chased him. Using the sword, he made a wild swing at the snake. It was a lucky hit, as the sword cleanly decapitated it.
I found dinner!
His stomach had been rumbling for a while now. If the system was to be believed, it should be safe to eat the snake in front of him. When he checked the treasure box, he found leather armor and a backpack inside. It was perfect. With this armor, the goblin's knives would bring him trouble no more. After equipping the armor, he smiled. He no longer looked like his former self. He now looked like a bona fide fantasy character. Do you wish to modify your body? Yes. Or no. Available body part: lesser wolf fangs, strength, mouth slot, snake fang strength +3, mouth slot, lesser wolf tail, extra slot, lesser wolf ear, negative trait, deafness, ear slot. James inspected what parts could be scavenged from his kills today. The snake was not poisonous, the goblin was worthless, and the system no longer recommended its body parts unless he asked for them. He chose wolf fangs. He hesitated, but after another deep breath, he chose it. He had to evolve. He needed to survive. He had abandoned his humanity that day.
Why did I hesitate? I am not particularly handsome?
James chuckled, a self-mocking laugh to calm himself before tapping the confirmation button. The wolf's corpse disappeared, and the change was immediate. James groaned as a snout, mimicking that of a wolf, grew from his mouth. He didn't have a mirror, but he could feel that his mouth was not human. He still had human eyes and a human head. The wolf's mouth looked like a badly done CGI effect on his face. He howled, and then he laughed. He finally changed. His life was no longer monotonous. This skill proved it. Those that couldn't change, those that couldn't adapt, wouldn't survive, whether in the old world or the new world. Even in the old days, big companies could still fall when they refused to change. The need to change is eternal. It was the law of the world, and James just had the perfect skill for it. His Chimera skill was exactly what he needed. With this skill, he could now adapt no matter what changed in his world. That was his new belief. You have leveled up to level 4. Coins received, 10. Name James. Age 35. Sex, male. Level 4. Coins, 120. Stats. Strength, 40. Up 5. Dexterity, 33. Up 1. Magic, 0. Mana, 0. Skills. Beginner Axe. Mastery level 1. New. Unique skill. Chimera. Goblin stomach, iron guts, stomach slot. Lesser Mana Core, Fire Spell, Magic +10, Mana +50. Extra Slot 1. Lesser Wolf Fangs. Strength, +5. Mouth Slot. Chapter 3. Shop. There was no firewood. However, with his new mana core, plundered from the goblin shaman, James could make a decent stove. He then cooked the snake he captured. James was no cook. He didn't know whether he had cooked the snake correctly. A dead cook would probably rise from their grave and scold James if they saw how he had cooked the snake. Nevertheless, hunger was the best spice for any food, for it felt delectable in his new wolf mouth. The dungeons were definitely changing. Unlike the natural cave from when he arrived here, now it felt like he was inside a castle's corridor. It felt more appropriate to call this place a corridor instead of a cave. James continued his journey. The day was still young. After about an hour, he found another group of goblins. The path was wider now, so the goblins could surround him. This time, there were 3 goblins, and 2 of those lesser wolves. With his newfound confidence, he dual-wielded his axe and sword. When he smiled, sharp rows of canine teeth were on full display. The monsters in the dungeon usually didn't have any sentience. Whenever they saw an enemy, it was their natural instinct to engage and eliminate them. Like robots, they would try even if their chance of succeeding was 0. That's what happened in this case. The wolf lunged at James only to be stabbed by the crude bronze sword of the previous goblins. When another goblin charged, its knife couldn't even penetrate the leather armor James was wearing. James smiled when he saw that the armor he had gotten from the treasure chest was working. After killing the goblin and wolf pair, James went on the offensive and charged toward the remaining goblins and wolf. His armor was scratched on the shoulder due to its fangs. With new armor, James could afford to take on more risks. The result was worth it. A notification popped up, informing him that he had leveled up to level 5. Along with it, the question of James's remaining stats and coins was also answered. Shop has been unlocked. You have leveled up to level 5. Coins received 10.
What is a shop?
James asked while he scanned his surroundings for any more enemies. The system answered his query, and a blue screen appeared before his eyes. The question that had been plaguing James's mind was finally answered. He finally knew how to use the coins in his status screen. Shop is where you can upgrade your skills and weapons. Upgrading your axe into a war axe will cost you 100 coins. Will you accept? James was stupefied. He thought he would be able to purchase things like food, clothes, soap, and power banks. Power banks for his smartphone might be too much to ask for, but the fact that he could only buy upgrades was devastating. It turned out he could only upgrade whatever he had in his belongings. He couldn't even upgrade the bronze sword he had swiped from goblins. Advanced Chop will be unlocked at level 10.
Is that all? Can I buy more things such as swords, skills, and armor? You only live once,
he said. Light enveloped his fireman axe, and now his axe had a longer blade and pikes at the back and the tip. Instead of swinging like a madman, he could now use it for stabbing. James immediately upgraded his axe. Other gamers might criticize him for being stupid, saying things like he should save his coins for future uses. However, James lived in the present. After his dead mother was denied health care by his insurance company, and his government stole his savings due to some taxes, he didn't believe in saving or insurance. After being fired from a supposedly stable job, he no longer believed in the future, so he decided to use his coins now. He decided to invest in the present.
All right, I will upgrade my axe.
James sighed, knowing the system would not answer him further. The weight also changed. Even though it had more steel and was overall an inch longer than his previous axe, it was lighter and more balanced. James felt it could also be used for throwing. James smiled and hung his axe on his belt. He now looked for another monster to test this new axe on. His coins had now decreased to 30. James lived in the present. If he had the coins, he would use them. He now had proper weapons, and he made the right choice, for his enemies would only get harder from now on. At the end of the corridor, a wooden door, like that of the back door of a fantasy castle, stood shut. James was about to open it, but he stopped himself. This world was not a game, but he understood that some game logic might apply here. The door might lead him to some boss monster. Another group of goblins squeaked manically as they dragged a bound woman and the corpse of a man. James had read that sort of book. He thought they were going to rape the woman. However, that did not seem to be the case here. The woman was still fully clothed, wearing jeans and a white t-shirt that had been dirtied. She did have bruises here and there. The goblins threw her in a cell and closed the door, then returned to their comrades, who were dining and feasting on the corpse without abandon. None approached the woman to do any lewd things to her. And so he cautiously opened the door and took a peek inside. His expectations were betrayed. Even though there was a huge underground castle hall, there was no boss monster, only numerous goblins lounging on the floor. Jail doors were strewn here and there, displaying skeletons of humans. James wondered whether those skeletons were real, but the answer came moments later when a scream was heard.
This is not that kind of game, huh? Full survival mode here.
James muttered. A tinge of disappointment was shown on his face. James dreamed of being a knight in shining armor. However, he also knew how harsh reality was. There were over 50 goblins with 10 wolves there. While most of them only had knives, 5 goblins, which James could only describe as goblin soldiers or knights, were fully armed. They wore helmets, shields, and either swords or spears. All of them were made of leather. Their gear was shabby, so calling them knights might be overestimating things. James instinctively knew those 5 were at a higher level than the rest of the goblins. He hesitated. In the end, he chose to open the door. He needed to settle his priorities. Saving that woman was nigh impossible without alerting this horde, and time was not on his side. If he dilly-dallied, the goblins might go for the woman next. James decided to act. It was a stupid decision, but he found no other choice but to engage the goblins directly. When he opened the door, the partying goblins looked at him. No remarks or jokes came from his mouth. He simply threw down his bag and readied his war axe and the short sword the previous goblin had. He came here not just to survive. He came here to challenge himself, to be better than before. He couldn't achieve that by just hiding in the corner like a rat. He now had power. He came here to change. His skill allowed him to evolve. That fact gave him courage.
Ah, come here! Come here and get me!
The monsters gleefully leaped at the insolent survivor, ready to serve themselves another corpse. James met them head-on, even when he was alone. These monsters were nothing compared to the dread of being fired, of being more useless than he had ever felt. There were no tricks and tactics. It was a pure battle of strength and guts. His new axe felt like a part of himself. It cut through the green monsters like a hot knife through butter.
2 down. More to go.
James didn't bother counting the goblins after hitting 10. One thing he knew, there were a lot of them, and he would kill them all or die trying. Unlike before, this was a wide room. The goblins easily surrounded him. James thought he was strong, and he did get stronger. His stats incrementally increased his strength. Right now, he could lift a goblin with one hand or crush their head with a punch. Whenever he swung his axe, a goblin would die even when they tried to block his strike with their tiny knives. But he was getting overconfident. The string of victories he achieved yesterday had made him blind. His decision was not wrong. He had to get through this room to pass. There was no other way. The system had designed this dungeon floor to be simple. Go through a corridor and fight monsters. However, he should have waited until there were fewer goblins. He thought his leather armor would protect him from goblin knives. But after the 10th kill, a goblin managed to sneak up on him and stab him in his unprotected thigh and arm.
Arch.
Pain assaulted him as he dropped to his knees. Using his new mouth, James bit the monster on its shoulder and threw it away, earning him another kill as the green monster's neck bent in the wrong direction. When pain assaulted him, he finally realized the gravity of his situation. Fear began to creep into him, but he pushed it away. This is nothing, he assured himself. He tried to stand up. Adrenaline worked wonders, for the pain in his thigh seemed lessened. In the corner of his vision, he saw the locked-up woman using the chance, while the goblins were busy with him to sneak out of the jail cell. The goblins were stupid, and this room did not belong to them. They didn't have the keys for any cells or doors in this dungeon, so the goblins only closed and latched the jail cell doors. The woman managed to sneak out safely and ran upstairs to another door, leaving James alone. The goblins didn't realize the woman had run away, but James did. James thought the woman would at least have the heart to support him. But no, just like normal humans, she prioritized her own life. James was the same before. He didn't care whether his coworker was fired as long as he survived. His heart broke a little when he knew he was abandoned. Now was not the time for introspection. James knew he was fighting a losing battle and needed to escape. He needed to find a better ground to fight them. This wide room was not ideal. There were too many blind spots where the goblins could surround him. With another swing, another goblin died. These goblins are learning, he thought. The way they surrounded him, the way they taunted him, it spoke of their rudimentary but efficient cooperation against James. Could I make it? James wondered. That's when the goblin soldiers marched forward. They kicked their fellow goblins aside. James didn't need to learn the goblins' language to understand that they were mocking their fellow goblins. Hatred suddenly surged because that green monster reminded him of his boss. Whenever he made a mistake or whenever he was inadequate for the task, these kinds of bosses always reprimanded him. In fact, these goblins were more honest. His boss tried to smooth things over on the surface, but James knew that they mocked him viciously behind his back. The fear that had crept into him was replaced by anger. Anger and wrath at the haughty goblin soldiers before him. Name, James. Age, 35. Sex, male. Level, 5. Coins, 30. Stats. Strength, 43, up 3. Dexterity, 33, up 3. Magic, 0. Mana, 0. Skills. Beginner Axe. Mastery level 2, up 1. Unique skill. Chimera. Goblin Stomach. Iron Guts. Stomach Slot. Lesser Mana Core. Fire Spell. Magic plus 10. Mana plus 50. Extra Slot 1. Lesser Wolf Fang. Strength plus 5. Mouth Slot. Equipment. Leather Armor. War Axe. Chapter 4. Damage. They took the stance and attacked James the moment his attention was drawn to the wolf. They slashed at him. Luckily, James had leather armor. It was ripped, but it served its purpose well. A sword answered the cowardly goblin. James was aiming for their heart, but the goblin dodged at the last possible moment, so the stab went to their shoulder instead. James's mind cleared. While his wrath for the goblin soldiers grew, he found himself getting calmer as he assessed the situation. This hall had 8 doors on the upper floor and 20 jail cells on the lower. James had to climb those stairs to get to those doors. The goblin soldiers were not like their stupid counterparts. They were wary. Instead of blindly attacking James like those knife-wielding ones, they took a stance. One of them shouted something, and a goblin with a wolf came charging at him. James swiped his axe at the charging lesser goblin. The dog lunged at him from behind and bit his shoulder. Using his new teeth, he bit it back and threw the bloodied wolf corpse away. Even though they had shields, helmets, and swords, these goblins were actually cowards. Still, it fell short. But that's what the axe is for. Like a pickaxe, James swung his axe to the pillar and pulled himself up. His muscles strained under pressure. He swore in his heart that he would start doing exercise if he managed to get away from this place alive. Power, just this one time, was all that he needed. He got stronger, but he was not a Superman just yet. His jump reached halfway. For humans, a 2-meter jump was enough to win an Olympic. That's how stats had made James stronger. He went from an ordinary office employee to an Olympic gold medalist in a few days. Adrenaline still subdued the pain in his leg. Seeing the dire circumstances, he searched for an escape route. An epiphany came to him as his eyes caught some protrusions on the second floor. His new axe was a war axe, and its blade was not the only thing it had. It had a spike on the back. With a smirk, James ran to the pillar and leaped. With a grunt, he climbed to the second floor. He was panting hard. However, time was not something he had now. The green monster screeched. They had lost 1/5 of their forces. Moreover, not only did they lose James, but they also lost the woman that they just captured. Feeling enraged, they run after James while squeaking loudly. Heaven answered him. Or more like, the new status did. Status had granted him the power that he needed to survive. He threw away his sword and reached out. When he felt the protrusion in his fingertips, his heart leaped in relief. He hung with his left hand, and using the axe, he roused himself up to the second floor. James could have run back the way he came from, but the door was closed, and he knew that path would lead him to a dead end, so he took the daring move to jump to the second floor. James ran to the door and opened it in haste. Inside, he was met with another corridor. The dimly lit, damp and humid dungeon wall was only exciting at first. Now these decorations brought him dread. The torches that hung in the corner added to the eerie atmosphere. James lay down. He could hear the goblins squeaking behind the door. James was too tired to run, and he had injured his leg. After pondering, he decided to make the last stand here. Here, in the corridor. At least he won't get surrounded. The door should limit how many goblins could come in at once.
Come here and get me, you fuckers!
James encouraged himself. The door opened, and James charged. Like a cornered rat, he manically swung his bloodied axe. He was lost in the sea of bloodshed and adrenaline. All he knew was to swing his axe wherever the green monster and purple dogs were. Blood splattered here and there. When his axe was caught on a wooden shield, he used his new maw and bit the goblin and tore its neck. Goblins were monsters. They did not flee and fought until the end. Like them, James will not pull back. Thanks to the corridor, James only needed to focus on what was in front of him. The horde came like an avalanche that broke upon a solid rock. It was not men against monsters, it was monsters against monsters, for James didn't fight like humans. He bit, he slashed, he kicked, and he clawed at the goblins. The goblins and the wolves responded in kind. They slashed, they bit, and they clawed at James. After who knows how long, a figure coated in red emerged from piles of over 40 goblins and wolves. His arms trembled with exhaustion. Blood dripped from his hands, both from his and them. His face was painted with the blood and flesh of his opponents. His back soon slumped on the corridor's wall.
I won!
His voice was hoarse, his voice tinged with awe. He had fought with everything he had. He thought he wouldn't make it, but he did. His leather armor was bitten and scratched everywhere. Some parts were ripped off. His arms and legs were worse as blood kept pouring out from knives that were stuck to them. However, he triumphed. James could feel he was changing for the better. He took some risk, and it paid off. However, the price was too steep. He was bleeding all over. He could feel himself weakening. His vision darkened.
Fucking boss. He was right. If I push myself, I will eventually prevail.
James recalled how his boss often scolded him. He said that James didn't work hard enough. He didn't take any risks, and he always played it safe. However, James knew that if he worked hard, all the rewards would go to his boss, not him. That's why he didn't even try. Name James.
Shit, this world still runs on blood. I am going to die.
James cursed. He felt himself weakening. You have leveled up to level 7. Coins received, 50. Level, 7. Sex, male, age 35. Stats, coins, 80. Strength, 48. Magic, 0. Dexterity, 39. Mana, 0. Unique skill, beginner axe. Mastery level 4, up 2. Skills, goblin stomach, iron guts, stomach slot. Chimera, lesser mana core. Fire spell, magic plus 10. Mana plus 50. Extra slot 1. Equipment, lesser wolf fang. Strength plus 5. Mouth slot. Leather armor, damaged. Chapter 5. Beetle Key. The beetle rustled when a creature entered its chamber. It was cozying and nesting, preparing to attract its mate that would never come. However, the weird creature disturbed its sleep. The creature was bizarre, as if several other creatures were sewn into it. It has the legs and arms of a goblin, yet it has the mouth of a wolf. The creature brandished its axe. It ran at a dizzying speed and slammed its axe towards the beetle, only for the axe to be repelled like a basketball hitting a wall. The beetle suddenly had an unimaginable surge of hatred toward the creature when it saw him. It had registered the creature as an enemy that needed to be vanquished at all costs. Stone Beetle was the toughest creature in this dungeon floor. With its hard carapace, no weapons could harm it. It also had a fast charging speed. Some might think that such creatures should not be on the first floor where all beginners gather. However, it has 2 fatal weaknesses. When charging, it couldn't turn, and when it was turned upside down, it was essentially helpless. However, this dungeon has a flat floor. It was unlikely to be tipped over. James's purpose was the key. He gave up attacking it with his axe when he saw that his axe didn't even scratch its carapace. So, after he dodged its powerful charge, he ran to the wall and stole the key while the beetle struggled to get its head out of the wall. The charge was so powerful that it broke the wooden door and cracked the wall before it. James felt as if a speeding car had gone past him when he dodged the creature. Then, the game of chase began. James was not the sharpest tool in the shed. The corridor was a straight line and was perfect for the beetle to run him over. James ran with all of its might when he heard a clicking sound the beetle made when it dug its leg into the floor. Luckily, even with his inferior limbs, he managed to reach the treasure chest room before the beetle made a kebab out of him with its horn. The beetle went past him like a bull that sought out its matador. Now that he had the key, it was time to open the chest before him. James was about to open the chest, but another epiphany came to him. He was one of the employees who liked to find loopholes in the rule. The beetle was strong. If James could kill it, he might get some useful parts out of it, like its carapace, legs, or horns. He wondered if he could use this unopened treasure chest as a weapon. And so James prepared his trap. He peeked outside the room only to find that the beetle was coming at him. The beetle was a monster, and their purpose was to kill survivors. It took over 5 minutes for the beetles to reach the room. James sat on the treasure chest, smirking as if taunting the bug to attack him. Following its instinct, the creature lowered its horned head. Its chitinous shell gleamed against the flickering light of the torches. Its legs scratched the rough cobblestone. Its prized horn was aimed at the hateful creature before it. When it slammed its legs to the cobblestone, it began to charge. Like a rhino, it stampedes toward James. It didn't know that it was all according to plan. James ducked down behind the treasure chest. He was prepared to dodge in case the beetle destroyed the chest. It was an unnecessary worry. A flash of purple light enveloped the chest, and the beetle was blown away by the purple barrier. Similar to what happened with James's axe, the beetle was blown away like a ping-pong ball. James was fortunate. After the beetle hit the wall, it bounced back a few times before landing on its back. Its soft underbelly was in full view. James took the chance immediately. He laughed and raised his axe overhead. Due to his new arm, the force diminished, but there was nothing more satisfying than cutting flesh with an axe. The blade dug into the thin carapace. Its mandible clicked in pain and frustration. However, there is nothing it can do. It knew that once it was flipped over, it was finished. Soon life diminished from its eye, and James got the system message he had been waiting for. Do you wish to modify your body? Yes or no. Available body part: beetle horn, extra slot. James wondered whether he could coat himself with its carapace. However, that does not seem to be the case, for the carapace was not on the list. James wanted that horn, but wondered whether it would actually be useful.
System, can I throw away body parts in extra slots?
Affirmative. You can discard any body parts with your Chimera skill, not just your extra slot.
All right, let us try the beetle horn.
Motes of light disintegrated the beetle's corpse, and a solid 30-centimeter horn arose on James' forehead. The horn gleamed with black luster. If people saw how James looked like now, the words that could describe him would not be human, but demons.
How many coins did I have? What's the next upgrade?
Knowing the system will answer, James began to talk with it as a way to fight his loneliness. He was an introvert, so he didn't talk much to begin with. But without his phone, loneliness began to creep in. You now have 90 coins. You can upgrade your beginner axe mastery level 4 to level 5 for 100 coins. Or you can upgrade your war axe into a lightning war axe for 500 coins. Or you can upgrade your Chimera skill for 1,000 coins.
I can upgrade my Chimera skill? What does it give me?
James was stunned. He didn't know the shop function could be so useful. Skill previews are not available. Please purchase the upgrade first.
You've got to be kidding me.
James was furious. He felt scammed. He never felt so baited. He was an avid gacha gamer, and he always previewed the character he was aiming for. However, the system was not so kind. He had to go through this trial blind. Would you like to see your stats? Yes or no.
Not yet. I want to open the chest first.
James fit the key in the chest. The key fits the chest like a glove. A satisfying click was heard when James turned the medieval key. Before opening the chest, James took some unnatural position, took some distance, and opened it with the tip of his axe. It has become a habit at this point. The first encounter with the snake haunted him every time he saw a chest now. His worry was in vain, for nothing came out of the chest now. Inside was a helmet and a sheathed dagger. Like his leather armor, the helmet was made perfectly for him because there was a hole in the forehead. In fact, James wondered if it was a set. However, the dagger was another thing. Water spout dagger. A dagger that was crafted by an ancient water mage. It was made for adventurers to fulfill their greatest need when adventuring, water. When mana is put into it, it will spout water suitable for drinking. Its use greatly declined when mage adventurers were in decline. Leather helmet. Water pouch. Thanks to the lesser mana core, James had mana. This dagger was a godsend. He was thirsty. Drinking animal blood sustained him for now, but he realized he wouldn't last long without actual water. When he directed his mana into it, water started to trickle, and he drank it with gusto. Like drinking from a straw, he sucked and licked from the tip of knives. However, a few minutes later, he felt exhausted, and the water stopped. The system notified him of the cause not even a second later. Mana depleted. Although capable of using magic, James only had the mana capacity of a goblin. It had low capacity. However, he had a water pouch now. He could simply wait for his mana to recover and store the water in his pouch.
My status, please.
Name James. Age 35. Sex. Male. Level 7. Coins. 90. Stats. Strength 48. Dexterity 39. Magic 0. Mana 0. Skills. Beginner Axe Mastery Level 4. Unique skill. Chimera. Goblin Stomach. Iron Guts. Stomach Slot. Lesser Mana Core. Fire Spell. Magic plus 10. Mana plus 50. Extra Slot 1. Lesser Wolf Fang. Strength plus 5. Mouth Slot. Goblin Legs. Dexterity minus 30%. Leg Slot. Goblin Hands. Strength minus 30%. Hand Slot. Stone Beetle's Horn. Strength plus 5. Extra Slot. New. Equipment. Leather Armor. Damaged. Leather Helmet. War Axe. Leather Pouch. Water Spout Dagger. Leather Bag. He was miffed about the arms and legs, but he had no choice at the time. He continued on his march. The winding corridor ended up back in the hall, where James met the horde of goblins. James sighed at the absurdity of this dungeon design.
Who would design a castle like this?
James chuckled. James forgot that dungeons are made by the system. They are made not for convenience or functionality of humans, but to test survivors. So the shape and design will vary, and it will be full of surprises. After carving an X on both doors that James had ventured, he now had 6 more doors. He crossed the path where the goblins had come before, since he believed that place would only lead to the survivor's other starting point. James wondered which path he should continue. He could simply gamble and pick any doors at random. However, his gaze wandered at the door the woman ran off to. He wanted to follow the place where that woman went, but he hesitated. If she was alive, she would definitely attack him. His form now was that of a monster. He decided to open the left door, subconsciously trying to get away from that door. James sighed. That woman did the right thing, but leaving James alone with a horde of goblins left a bitter taste in his mouth. Nevertheless, fate ran another course, for this path ended with another treasure chest guarded by 2 goblins.
Dead end, huh?
James muttered. However, he got a treasure chest, and killing the 2 goblins netted him another 10 coins. After posing lowly and getting a bit further, he opened the chest. Several coins appeared for a while, and they soon disintegrated into motes of light. You have obtained 50 coins.
All right. What's my total coins?
You have 150 coins in total.
You said before I could upgrade my axe skills, right?
Would you like to upgrade your beginner axe mastery to level 5 for 100 coins?
Yes.
James nodded. He lived in the present. Axe mastery made him more proficient with the axe. He could feel it. He wanted to upgrade his axe and Chimera skill too, but since he didn't know whether he would get another coins, he decided to spend it now. Beginner Axe Mastery upgraded to level 5. A new weapon skill is unlocked. Power Strike.
What's a skill?
James tilted his head. He knew about skills from gaming, but he didn't know how it would apply in the real world. Skills are gained when survivors have gained sufficient levels. For weapon skills, it will be gained when survivors have gained sufficient mastery in the said weapon.
How do I use these skills?
Simply imagine yourself using the skill. The system will help survivors with skill execution. James closed his eyes. When he imagined what a power strike shot would be, his axe blazed with blue light. James looked at his axe, astounded. The light soon vanished as if it wasn't there. The skills will be cancelled if James breaks his focus. James took a stance while imagining his new skill. He could feel his skills activating. Power alien to him gathered on his hand. This time, he didn't let go of his focus. Searching for a target, he aimed his skill at the wall. His arm moved by itself. The light of the skill guided the way. With a booming sound, like a comet, his axe traced the wall. The wall cracked and gave in. A wide gash was left in its wake. James looked at the result of his skill, stupefied.
Epic!
James snickered. His gait widened when he left the room. He felt like that protagonist who just got a super deadly finisher move. Little did he know that he would get humbled soon.